The PM's plans for more grammar schools get a fail from friend and foe alike. A schools inspector and a former Tory Education Secretary condemn them. Labour say they'll block them in the Lords.
Also tonight, Iran jails a British mother for 5 years for spying. Her family say she's a charity worker who'd done no wrong.
Sophie Thornhill adds to GB's Golden Games as Sarah Storey becomes our most decorated female Paralympian.
The enormity of being the most successful probably won't sink in until we're back at home and we're scrubbing the bathroom floor or something and you realise, oh, yeah, that's pretty cool.
And claims that statins are even better than were thought at avoiding heart attacks and strokes.
This is the ITV Evening News with Alistair Stewart and Charlene White.
Good evening. It was her first major policy speech, but Theresa May's plans for more grammar schools in England got, at best, a must try harder from a comprehensive range of voices. Disquiet on the Tory benches was voiced by a former Education Secretary, and the head of Ofsted doesn't like them either.
Mrs May insisted the reforms would create a great meritocracy and not see a two-tier system of haves and have-nots. But she's got a fight on her hands. The Labour Party and senior peers say they'll block it in the House of Lords. From Westminster, here's our Deputy Political Editor, Chris Shipp.
In one of the few parts of the country where they still have grammar schools, Kent, construction work continued today on a new, or rather extended grammar. But now all schools in England might be able to select pupils based on their ability. Theresa May's first big speech was a pitch to working class voters, those families who don't claim benefits but still struggle to make ends meet and find a good school for their children.
I want to see children from ordinary working class families given the chances their richer contemporaries take for granted. That means we need more great schools.
And for more great schools, she confirmed she meant selective ones. The new selective schools will have to take a quota from lower income households, team up with local primaries in disadvantaged areas, or create new non-selective schools. Does that answer her critics? Well, no. The former Tory Education Secretary, Nicky Morgan, tweeted today, identifying areas of poor education and lack of good schools is right. Idea that more selection is the answer is wrong.
No matter what quotas you put in, no matter how many feeder schools you tell grammar schools to help, you'll still end up with good schools who cream off the brightest pupils and less good schools.
I have to say that one of the mistakes I think you're making is an assumption that even in that sort of binary system, you had good schools that took pupils of a certain ability, and by definition, other schools weren't good. What we want to do is ensure that all schools in the country are providing a good quality of education for children.
But her plans have one very powerful enemy in England's education system.
The great danger of selection at 11 is that we are consigning children to failure. They feel they've failed their test, and then they're off to a secondary, what used to be known as a secondary modern school, because they're not all ability schools. They're not taking in the brightest and the best. They're taking those who have failed at 11.
Other than new grammar schools, Mrs May proposed lifting the restrictions so faith schools can admit more pupils by religion, a tougher public benefit test for big independent schools or they risk losing their tax breaks, and universities must give more support to state schools.
If the governor put this in a manifesto and asked for a public mandate, there would have been that debate around it. We haven't even seen that. So trying to slide it in under the radar somehow at the last minute isn't something the House of Lords likes at all.
And with the House of Lords in no mood to be helpful to Mrs May, it's hard to see how any of her plans will survive without being radically changed.
Chris Shipp reporting there. Well, the Prime Minister says in many areas of England, a selection by house price already exists, with the better off moving into the catchment areas of the better schools. Mrs May says her reforms would help poorer pupils by forcing the new grammars to offer them places. Demon Green went to York to hear the views of pupils, parents and teachers.
There aren't any grammar schools here in York, and teachers at this comprehensive say their most recent exam results show the city doesn't need any. It just needs good teachers.
As a head teacher, you mustn't be a feather for each wind that blows, right? I know what matters, and what matters is what goes on in the classroom, and I stick with that, and I let the politics go on, and I focus really hard on what goes on in the classroom.
If we open our books to last lesson yesterday...
If you're a teacher long enough, they'll tell you see fashions come and go, but the only thing good schools have in common is good teaching staff.
Definitely they shouldn't be bringing in a compulsory change.
These pupils are studying for A-levels now, but aren't convinced they'd have done well enough at 11 to go to grammar school. Putting all abilities together, they say, helps everyone do well.
Being in secondary school, when you're like in a mixed ability class, if you have people who are like sitting right next to you aiming for A stars, you're like, well, I can as well. And then if you think that, you're more likely to get there.
But it's the parents of primary school pupils in York who'll get to choose where they end up. Some here say the children already do exams and grammar selection wouldn't add to the burden.
Children at age 11 are already put through SATs, and some schools, not this school, but some schools apply a lot of pressure to SATs. So if the child is able and has that pressure, then they'll survive that fine.
Everyone in this city wants the best future for their child. The only question, whether what's best for their child is also the best for everyone. Damon Green, ITV News, in York.
And back now to our Deputy Political Editor, Chris Shipp. Chris, mixed reaction there in Damon's piece, but there's a lot more at stake here for Mrs May than simply the reform of education.
Yeah, you're right, Alistair. I mean, this was a speech about more than education, although it feels like we've been talking about England's grammar schools for the last 3 days. You might remember, Alistair, that when Mrs May became Prime Minister, she said she wanted to govern for everyone, not just the privileged few. She's repeated it many times since. Well, today she spelt out who she was trying to reach. She said they're people who earn £19,000, £20,000, £21,000 a year. They do not get benefits, but they struggle, and they feel like politicians have forgotten about them and have ignored them for too long, and they were more likely to vote for Brexit in the EU referendum. And she says it's to those people she will turn next in her speeches on housing, on jobs and on the economy.
Chris, thank you.
The Foreign Office says it's deeply concerned over reports that a British woman has been jailed in Iran for 5 years on secret charges. Charity worker Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe was seized as she tried to return home to the UK back in April. Well, our political correspondent Paul Brand is outside the Foreign Office for us tonight. Paul, what are officials there doing about this?
Well, in the past hour, Charlene, they have said that the Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary are continuing to press Iran on this case. The problem is that is what they have been doing for the past 5 months with little progress. Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe's family still don't know exactly what it is she is charged with here, only that she is accused of trying to topple the Iranian regime. They believe she's actually caught in a power struggle here between the Iranian government, which wants to open up to the West, and Iran's Revolutionary Guard, which protects the regime and doesn't want change. It is worth noting that this sentencing comes the very week that Britain reappointed an ambassador to Iran for the first time since 2011. The main concern now, though, for Nazanin's family is that she will serve this sentence at Evin prison, which has been condemned by Amnesty International for its conditions, all the while separated from her 2-year-old daughter who was with her when she was arrested.
I think it was incredibly hard during the interrogation period. I think now the fact that she's angry would suggest she's feeling stronger. But she says, yeah, that, when she wakes up each day and realises where she is, she doesn't think that she can go for another day. So that suggests it's pretty tough.
Well, her family say they will appeal, even though they don't know exactly what it is they are appealing, or even if that is an option.
Paul, thank you.
3 women arrested after a car was found loaded with gas canisters in Paris were directed by so-called Islamic State, French prosecutors say. Officials say the women had been planning to attack the Gare de Lyon, a major Paris railway station.
Here, Scotland Yard says it's looking at whether any criminal offences have been committed following newspaper allegations about the MP Keith Vaz. The Labour MP stood down as chairman of the House of Commons Home Affairs Committee on Tuesday. Great Britain is second in the medal table after a golden start to the Rio Paralympic Games. We currently have 6 goals, putting us just behind China and comfortably ahead of Uzbekistan in third. Among the champions was cyclist Dame Sarah Storey, who's now our most successful female Paralympian.
There were also a clutch of medals in the pool, a silver in the long jump and a bronze in the weightlifting. Richard Pallow rounds up the action from Rio.
Scott, they are the Paralympic champions.
Disbelief, then the realisation, as visually impaired Sophie Thornhill is told she has achieved what she had come to Rio for. Alongside pilot Helen Scott, the pair are our latest gold medalists. It continues a remarkable British effort so far in the velodrome. 4 events entered, 4 events won. Our first athletics medal has arrived too, from Steph Reed in the long jump. While Libby Clegg was originally disqualified after her 100 metres world record because her guide runner appeared to be ahead, which is illegal. She has since been reinstated. Last night it was all about the dozen for the Dame, a 12th Paralympic gold for Sarah Storey. A piece of history that she told me she can't get her head around yet.
The enormity of being the most successful probably won't sink in until we're back at home and we're scrubbing the bathroom floor or something and you realise, oh, yeah, that's pretty cool.
If Storey has heard the national anthem countless times, it was the first occasion her 3-year-old daughter Louisa had, and the youngster apparently had a somewhat different interpretation.
She loved it. As soon as the national anthem started going, she started singing "Let It Go" from Frozen. So she was having a whale of a time. Didn't really matter what sort of song we were singing. She was really, really happy.
Up towards the line.
The team's 11-medal haul on day 1 was by far the best it has ever achieved. Steve Bate, who has no peripheral vision, won gold alongside his pilot Adam Duggleby in the tandem pursuit. While Bethany Firth set a new world best, winning the S14 100 metres backstroke, a category for those with learning difficulties. So far, Paralympics GB are way exceeding expectation. Perhaps we should start to consider the exceptional as normal. Well, there are nearly 20 finals tonight involving Britain's many medal chances across powerlifting, swimming and cycling. But I think the real highlight will be in the athletics stadium. We have many gold medal opportunities. Perhaps the highlight of that will be the amputee Johnny Peacock, who of course lit up London 2012 Games and runs in his final at about midnight your time.
Thanks, Richard.
UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon tonight condemned North Korea's most powerful nuclear test to date as a brazen breach of sanctions. The explosion, which triggered a magnitude 5.3 earthquake, was stronger than that which destroyed Hiroshima. And chillingly, the secretive state now claims it has the capability to put nuclear warheads onto long-range missiles for the first time, as our China correspondent Debbie Edward reports.
A triumphant North Korean newsreader declares the country has successfully tested a nuclear warhead. The broadcast celebrating Kim Jong-un and his newly manufactured weapon of mass destruction. It prompted swift and emphatic international condemnation.
I condemn in the strongest possible terms the underground nuclear test by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. This is yet another brazen breach of the resolutions of the Security Council.
A magnitude 5 earthquake was triggered by the weapons test. It was the second test this year, the 5th overall, and by far the strongest yet. Repeated UN sanctions have failed to stop leader Kim Jong-un in his pursuit of nuclear proliferation.
Each test has taken them a little bit further, and eventually unless some sort of agreement can be reached or something else can be done to stop them, they will have a workable nuclear weapon.
In neighbouring South Korea, they held an emergency security summit. The Prime Minister declaring the test a threat to world peace. Hooray for the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, they cheered. On the country's National Day, This test gave extra cause for celebration. This woman in Pyongyang saying she was proud of her country and how it could stand up for itself. A fifth test indicates this most reclusive and extreme of nations is gravely close to fulfilling its nuclear ambition. Debbie Edward, ITV News.
Still to come on the ITV Evening News. From best of friends to the closest of rivals, Pepe and Jose prepare for the Manchester showdown.
That story and more after the break.
Welcome back. Statins are safe. That's what a major new review has concluded, with claims that they can cause serious side effects not being accurate. 6 million people take the cholesterol-reducing drugs in the UK to lower the risk of heart attacks and strokes. But it's feared scare stories are putting people off. Nazanin Mashiri spoke to one patient.
Steve Bowley is a fit and active 65-year-old. But his family has a history of heart problems. His father had to retire early after 2 heart attacks. Steve says his own good health is down to taking statins.
I'm still earning, paying taxes, and I could have been off 10 years ago. So I think it's meant that I've lived a full and normal life.
Over the years, the question of whether or not to take statins has frankly left many of us confused. In 2011, researchers warned patients statins may cause memory loss and depression. But a year later, a report in The Lancet explained why everyone over 50 should take the medication. In 2013, the British Medical Journal suggested statins may be causing more harm than good. But then, in 2014, NICE, the health watchdog, told doctors to prescribe statins to more people. The Lancet says its latest report is an attempt to end this controversy and avoid an MMR-style public health scare. Its author insists the side effects have been exaggerated and that statins are safe and effective.
I think that there are 2 sides to every story, but what they need to be is based on the evidence. So when one looks at the evidence, it's quite clear about the magnitude of the benefits and the magnitude of the harms.
But today, the British Medical Journal reopened this endless debate.
The only people who have seen the data from these trials are the trialists and the drug manufacturers. And I think in this day and age, that is not okay.
While 2 medical journals clearly disagree on who should take statins, most experts accept they have helped millions of people like Steve Bowley. In the end, this latest research gives doctors and patients a better chance of making an informed choice. Nazanin Mashiri, ITV News.
Tomorrow's Manchester derby is being billed as the most expensive game of football ever, with around £600 million worth of talent on display. But eyes won't just be on the players.
No, the match also pitches 2 of football's most high-profile managers against each other, as our sports correspondent Ian Payne explains.
They used to be the best of friends. This is Pep Guardiola in the green, hugging Jose Mourinho when they were both at Barcelona. But when they became rival managers, the atmosphere was frosty at best, neither man able even to look at each other when the tension was at its highest. And tomorrow they'll have to do it again. So at today's press conferences, it seemed an obvious thing to ask about.
Pep, there are many pictures of you and Jose shaking hands at matches, but not looking at each other. How will your meeting be tomorrow, and how would you describe your relationship with him?
Okay, the last period in Madrid-Barcelona was not easy for both of us, but we met each other 3 weeks ago in the Managers Premier League, and we spoke fluently.
And if Guardiola was trying to play it down, Mourinho was, well, cryptic when asked about their relationship.
For me, you are one of the best journalists that I found in this country. So you don't need my answer to have an answer.
The game itself is huge in so many ways. It'll become the most watched match in Premier League history. The televised game will be beamed live to 190 countries around the world. The 12:30 lunchtime kickoff means it can easily be seen in all the major time zones around the globe, helping it capture a huge audience and possibly breaking the previous record of around 700 million viewers. And despite their efforts to play it all down, the focus will be just as much on the two men in the dugouts as it will be on the teams. Both of them are winners and probably the best two managers in the world right now. Ian Payne, ITV News, Manchester.
Finally tonight, the inspirational moments an Indian model horrifically scarred in an acid attack braved the New York catwalk. Reshma Qureshi suffered facial burns and lost an eye after her brother-in-law threw sulphuric acid over her 2 years ago.
To applause, she appeared during New York Fashion Week to call for a ban on the sale of corrosive substances. Robert Moore reports.
She may be the most courageous model ever to take to the catwalk. For Reshma Qureshi is the Indian teenager who was attacked with acid 2 years ago. Despite her scars, she accepted an offer to open New York Fashion Week, an attempt to challenge stereotypes of what it is to be beautiful.
पहली टिप बहुत ही सिंपल है एक लेमन की
Out of her personal pain, Reshma has become a powerful advocate for other victims of acid attacks, a form of revenge assaults on women, disturbingly common in South Asia. This was her reaction when an Indian fashion brand asked her to open their show in New York.
सच में रेशमा हमारे स्टेज पे चले अरे रो क्यों रही हो बुद्धू
Those attending the show yesterday paid tribute to the 19-year-old.
The fact that she's here, I have goosebumps on my face. The fact that she's here and she's strong and she's such a lovely young lady. She has so many things going for her. I think the world is at her fingertips right now is amazing.
Reshma herself said the experience was beyond her wildest dreams. I want to show, she says, there is nothing in a face. Even though I look like this, I can do things, and I can be a model. It's hoped this may inspire the many other victims of similar attacks in Asia and beyond. Robert Moore, ITV News.
And Tom Bradby will be here later with news at 10.
But from everyone here on the team, enjoy your evening. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.